Okay, take it away, Dr. Chung.
Hi everyone, this is so good to have you here today. And I'm so honored to facilitate today's section. This is our environmental justice guest lecture and speaker series. We are not immigrants, unsettling Asians in America. So this speaker series are organized and initiated by the Amado Kaya Initiative. And the Amado Kaya Initiative is a BIPOC-led project which advances the commitments of late social justice activist and community organizer Amado Kaya Kenham Rodriguez, who died at his age of 22 in 2020 after supporting an indigenous group in the Philippines suffering from losses due to typhoon. AKAI continues its legacy by disseminating this indigenous, land-based, decolonial knowledge and promoting individual and collective healing, transformation, and liberation. And this year, we run this guest lecture series collaboratively hosted by the Amado Kaya Initiative and the Asian American Cis Stewards at UC Davis, which I have been developing in collaboration with our students and local Asian American activists, farmers, and the scholars, scientists from the plant science. So the title of our lecture series, We Are Not Immigrants, Unsettling Asians in America, is inspired both by Hawaiian sovereignty activist and professor of Hawaiian studies, Hanai Kai text poem, Settlers, Not Immigrants, as well as Native American studies scholar Loksan Dunbar Ortiz' book, Not a Nation of Immigrants. So this series hosts lectures and conversations with Asian American and other scholars and activists of color who write about or are actively resisting white settler colonialism in California and beyond through work with indigenous communities, environmental justice, and or land stewardship. It also holds space for Asian American identified folks, the main audience for AKI, as well as the Asian American Cis Stewards, to listen and learn from indigenous peoples to encourage us to challenge and resist our complicities with white settler colonialism as residents on Turtle Island. So our series will run to this month with specific dates and speaker information to be announced periodically. So please be sure to follow us on Instagram at amadokaya and subscribe to our newsletter at amadokaya.org to stay updated. And if you like this series and want more, please consider supporting us by donating. Donations allow us unrestricted funding to continue our programming in environmental justice, indigenous solidarity, and more, especially in the context of AB 715 being challenged as we speak right now. So please check out our QR code or links we share here. And I would appreciate it if you consider donating us. And this is my honor to introduce today's speakers from the Hummingbird Farm. So Hummingbird Farm, they will give a talk titled SF Solidarity Forever, Building the People Power Needed for Environmental Justice and Land Reformation. Hummingbird Farm is an urban agriculture, food justice, and leadership program brought to you by POTHER, led by Urban Campesinx. Sorry if I pronounced it in an incorrect way. The Hummingbird Farm creates space to reflect the deep diversity of the neighborhoods and invite folks to come together to practice environmental, economic, and health justice strategies in the southeast neighborhoods of San Francisco, reflecting the lessons, wisdom, and seeds of the ancestors. The Hummingbird Farm works hand in hand to create healthy and vibrant communities by growing food and plant medicine and regenerating cultural practices. So please welcome the two speakers of the day. Oh, sorry, there was one more slide. Hummingbird Farm embodies the spirit of environmental justice as a revolutionary space where solidarity-based economic models and collective governance of land take center stage. The Hummingbird Farm's commitment to environmental justice ensures that the benefits of sustainable living and cultural preservation extend not only to Latinx immigrants in San Francisco, but to all underinvested communities, creating a resilient and inclusive community for generations to come. So please welcome the two fabulous speakers of the day. Let me pass this mic to the two speakers.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tere Almaguer.
And hi, everyone. My name is Alondra Aragon.
And we're gonna take a moment to share our screen so we can begin our presentation. Enter full screen. This one? All right. So we're just excited to be here. Sorry.
Sorry, guys, we're gonna do this one more time. We're gonna have to share. Hold
And so we are just excited to share some of the work that we've been doing for the last 20 plus years in San Francisco. And, you know, we titled it SF, Solidarity Forever, Building Bridges of Solidarity across, across SF that reflect the diversity of our neighborhoods, growing together to build the people power to reclaim public land for environmental justice. You know, we've heard from a lot of our elders that we are each other's medicine. And what we've experienced in our solidarity work is that together, as when we organize and we unite, we are unstoppable. And we've seen that in history over and over again, that when we come together, like the Filipinos and the Latinos came together in the farm workers with the UFW, or, you know, the ethnic studies struggles that happen at San Francisco State, we can accomplish anything, right? I think Urban Campesinx grew out of a need to reclaim our relationship to Mother Earth and each other to heal, because we are living in Southeast San Francisco that has been the most impacted by environmental racism. And for those of you who haven't heard that term, environmental racism is the institutional practice practiced in every city in the United States and worldwide, where the majority of pollution and different negative and things are put in our neighborhoods and affect us and our health. And so,
And so we just want to, before moving forward, a practice that we like to embody is always honoring the people and ancestors of these lands that we stand on. So we are currently in Yelamu, which is Ramaytush Ohlone lands, and so we're really grateful to share this opportunity to be able to steward these lands. And as you know, guests of these lands, we always like to honor the original stewards.
we also like to think about all the plant cestors and the original plants of this land, who have been taking care of the soil, the land, the whole ecosystem, us, and all the animals that live here and are original to here. So just giving thanks to all the plant cestors. And we also put the Ramaytush Ohlone website and encourage people to donate. And so as I was saying about environmental racism, I think to talk a little bit more about poder, we are rooted in the environmental justice principles created by the People of Color Summit in 1991. And Poder as an organization led by Latinx moms came together to combat lead poisoning in the Mission District. And moms came together because their kids were being disproportionately affected because we were renting, we were in old housing stock. And it was the first time that there was kind of like a clear, an analysis bias for us in the mission that we needed to do something about how our environment was affecting us. Lead was just the beginning of an analysis in the northeast industrial zone of the mission. I think it was very powerful at the People of Color Summit because we did have representation from the mission and from Poder to acknowledge that, you know, we speak for ourselves. Many times there's a lot of institutions within the government that make decisions for us. And I think environmental justice brought this lens of nobody knows what needs to happen in our neighborhoods more than us that are affected. And we speak for ourselves, right? We know what the solutions are because nobody is going to care for a child that's affected more than them, right? And know what it is that needs to happen to ensure that, you know, we have healthy homes, healthy communities, healthy environments. We want to give a big shout out to the Southwest Network for Environmental and Economic Justice. That was my introduction into environmental justice when I first started working with Poder. And we gathered in Albuquerque, and it was beautiful to see folks from APEN, the Asian Pacific Environmental Network, the Chinese Progressive Association, SWAP, the Southwest Organizing Project. I mean, it was over 50 organizations representing people of color from all over the Southwest. And we all came together to share our stories, to share our campaigns, to share our strategies. And from that emerged the Youth Leadership Development Campaign that later became the Four Directions Intergenerational Exchange. And this is a picture from one of those gatherings. And I just think it was really a springboard into really delving deep into the investment of what it meant to build bridges across language, across culture, when a lot of times the dominant narrative is that, you know, we're separate, we're different, we shouldn't mix, right? But in San Francisco, knowing that we are the majority as Latinx and Asian communities, the potential of what it means to not only win campaigns, but to gain family, to build strong relationships, to support each other, to love each other. And so some of the elements for building solidarity that we're going to be talking about are, you know, sharing our stories, what it means to talk about, you know, where our families come from, what are some of the things our families have been through, what's, you know, my story in my neighborhood. It's about sharing joint political education workshops. How are we learning together to analyze and delve deep into being critical, right, about the histories that were taught in school. Shout out to everybody who's worked on ethnic studies, curriculum implementation. The first walkout I ever was a part of was in 1993 or 94. We walked out for ethnic studies. And it was so beautiful to see that, you know, 20 years later or 30, I don't even know how long later, you know, through the work of so many folks that was implemented, because so much of our own self-worth and self-love comes from knowing what our stories are. I think it was really important for us to create space for us to reshape our narratives, to share our culture and traditions, to do team building activities, to travel together to movement spaces, and then ultimately to just work on campaigns in our neighborhoods together and have tangible wins. And we're going to share a little bit about how we've been able to do that.
And so at Poder, we have a joint program called Common Roots with Poder and our another community-based organization called the Chinese Progressive Association. based in Chinatown. And given that we're both member-based organizations, we primarily serve people in, Baudelaire primarily serves our communities in the districts of the Excelsior and the Mission, and CPA is focused in Chinatown and Excelsior. And so through this joint collaboration, we've been really able to organize and create a lot of victories in our communities that's led by our youth programs, Common Roots. This is a little bit about the history of Common Roots. Common Roots is like I mentioned, a youth program collaboration between Baudelaire and CPA. This program was initiated in 1997 in order to build immigrant youth power in San Francisco and create links among our constituents, low-income Latino and Chinese immigrants. This program provides an opportunity to develop cross-cultural, cross-racial awareness and links among youth from the two largest immigrant communities in the U.S.
And so just to share a little bit about some of our campaigns, this is a list of like some of the campaigns that we worked on together, and really, some victories that we've been able to secure. In 2010, we did a hospital campaign to secure beds for our community in the Mission, which was one of two hospitals that our community has access to. In 2011, we helped kind of shape a healthcare services master plan, because also as communities living in Southeast San Francisco, we are the most affected by pollution. We are in the neighborhoods that are zoned for factories, right, that are zoned for industry. And so it was really important for us to be able to create a master plan that included us having more access to healthcare, because we're the most affected by environmental racism. In 2012, we worked on a campaign to secure land to build affordable housing. It's now known as the Capuzzo Affordable Housing Complex, is right above the Balboa BART station. And so we were able to work together for a summer to pressure the MTA into giving us the land to build the housing. And that's a victory that those 30 youth from that summer are able to always point at and be like, we made that happen. And this was also a collaboration, not just with Poder and the Chinese Progressive Association, but also with the Filipino Community Center and Coleman Advocates. In 2013, Common Roots were the youth that helped do a community survey project and summer harvest for Crocker Farm, which is now Hummingbird Farm. And so together we were able to go out and do 300 surveys with neighbors, do elder interviews, do focus groups with community groups, to ensure that we were able to build a farm that was based on community needs and wants. In 2014, we did a campaign to fight for a $15 minimum wage and anti-speculation tax, and just, really try to improve kind of like the wages for our families, because we're living in such a city with such that's so expensive. In 2015, we did another garden survey to do similar to what we did to Hummingbird Farm. And this birthed Sisterhood Gardens, which is a beautiful garden on the west side of the city, managed by the Chinese Progressive Association. And then in 2016, we did a public land in people's hand fight for affordable housing at the Balboa Reservoir, and just really organizing to make sure that housing that was built on public land was going to be affordable to our communities, and to really get input from neighbors and our families on what it is that we wanted, because we know that many times developers, they develop for profit and not for people. And so really looking at like, if it's public land, what are the ways in which we can ensure our families are going to be the ones that get to live there? Oh, sorry. And so this is just some of those pictures of what we talked about. Blooming in the midst of gentrification was an art project we did with Galería de la Raza. And just talking about our Pueblote campaign, which is public land in people's hands, pueblo meaning people, lote meaning lots, and really like the in-depth work that we did with our youth program to ensure that we had affordable housing, to ensure that we were able to have community gardens and farms that we had access to that weren't locked up, to ensure that there was money to invest in community leaders, right? And making sure they were able to, not only be a part of these campaigns, but be able to go to different stipend and opportunities, to be able to go to movement spaces, to be able to learn from other folks. And then cooperatives, like what are the ways in which we're also learning to govern things together as a collective, right? One of the things we realized was that we don't learn anywhere how to collectively govern, right? A lot of what we got to delve into is like our indigenous ancestral practices. And so how do we create the space to go deeper into what collective governance looks like? On the right, this was some artwork developed by the Common Roots youth. And really, like, as we start sharing our stories and talking to each other, bringing together the Quetzalcoatl and the dragon, and what are the ways in which our cultures, even though, they're different, there's so many similarities, especially when it comes to, being settlers in this country. But also having experienced extreme racism, having experienced institutionalized racism, and continuing to experience it through environmental racism and a lot of the issues of equity that exist, especially now. And on the bottom, just wanted to share, like, just those are a lot of like the pictures from the campaigns that we shared, and really how working together to learn about these issues and how they affect our families, and then creating solutions that we're proposing to the city, and then going and marching and demanding that, and demanding that our solutions are implemented. And just grateful that, we were able to, because we come together, have wins.
And so this year our Common Roots program was delved into restorative and transformative justice. And so through our joint program, we had some youth lead a bilingual Spanish and English transformative justice training where they kind of did like a peer learning opportunity to dive into like different ways that we like think about like conflict, think about tension, think about, when we're not in alignment and what that means when we're organizing, right? I think right now there's a lot of fear going on in community. There's a lot of like what is it, like violent hate,
Divide and conquer.
yeah, like there's just so much going on in our community, and it's like how are we able to like have conversations amongst our community and across cultures. And so we were able to really dive into like listening circles and just different ways that, going back to like stories, right, finding ways that our stories have commonalities and really thinking about how we can put care into practice with each other. And we also engaged in really learning about our ecosystems. Common Roots has been able to create like generational wealth, right? And one of these spaces is like this living classroom you see here, Hummingbird Farm, that was organized by Common Roots. And we've been able to dive into like our watersheds, right? And how are we taking care of our water cycles, right? As guests of these lands, like what are the ways that we're tending to this water cycle and helping this environment thrive, while like learning about different ways that we can put into practice power. And so this is just some pictures of us this past spring in the summer, and we're gonna have like a watershed bike ride June 13th, 5 to 8, Capuso. For any listeners in San Francisco interested in coming and learning about different ways that we can tend to our watersheds in San Francisco.
And one of the things that we also hear from our elders is that we reflect the land. And when we heal Mother Earth, we heal ourselves. And so a big part of being at the farm and talking about, you know, a lot of these inequities that we don't even really have to talk about because everybody's feeling them deeply, especially right now. It's about like the joy that comes out of like doing a wetland restoration and learning about a plant as you're building, right, with other team members, as you're learning to ride a bike. And so really looking at like what are the ways in which we're able to see that reflection, right, of us healing and the land healing. And so, you know, one of the biggest investments that we made in our youth is really people-powered planning. And so a lot of times, you know, the planning departments that are creating these luxury developments in our neighborhood, that are creating or are putting dumps in our neighborhoods, or are creating opportunities for gentrification. They deny us access to a process by talking in jargon, by creating systems that they act like we don't understand. And so a big part of what we've been doing is figuring out like, how are we learning this together and how are we decodifying this language that is affecting our community so much. And so here on the top left of me is Jaime and Christian, who were Common Roots Youth Organizers and an elder from the Filipino Community Center. And while we were organizing for Kapuso, not only were we organizing to build affordable housing, but we were looking at like, well, what's around there? You know, like which doors did we knock and ask people what they wanted? What's missing? Like, what are the services that our community needs that's missing, right? So that we don't have storefronts that just go to the highest bidder. And just what that looks like working in collaboration with the planning department, because we were one of the first organizations to get funding from the planning department to do a full large scale community engagement project, and what it means to bring elders from different community and youth together from different communities. On the bottom, that was the culmination of our summer project where we got the MTA to hand over the land to build Kapuso. And so we brought together, like I said earlier, Common Roots, which was CPA and Poder, Coleman Advocates and FCC. And that was like all our youth right there in one picture. And then FCC also brought a lot of elders. They're the ones in the back holding the signs. And we did an action in front of the MTA where we did a play on the importance of building affordable housing that our families could move into because of the need. And then the youth led the whole rally. Part of their leadership training was that they were the MCs, they created the script, they did the play, they made that artwork, and that built lifelong friendships amongst that group of youth. And also that shared pride in being able to have been a part in making these homes accessible in our community. On the right-hand side, that picture is just us surveying when we did those 300 surveys for the farm. And so that was on site before the farm was built, and we would organize by precincts and go out in groups. And this was pre-COVID, so people still opened their doors. And we were able to ask people like, well, do you think a farm would be important? You know, what would you like to see? And it was like an intense 4-page survey. And the responses were 92% of the people were really excited for something. The Excelsior district where we did the surveys is the area with the most kids, the most elders, and the most cultural diversity and foreign-born folks. And so it was beautiful to see the excitement. And this is when we decided we didn't want to have fences. We didn't want to close the garden off. We wanted people to have access to it all the time, because the reality is that a lot of people don't have access to backyards. A lot of people don't have access to like a space where they could connect to Mother Earth. And people were really, really excited to build across language, and cultural barriers, right? And so, you know, to this day, you know, whenever you're at the farm, we have a lot of Asian elders that come, and even though we don't understand each other's languages, we communicate through the plants. And so it's beautiful to see reality, you know, what we worked for. And at the bottom, it's also kind of like the youth group. I think that was doing surveys for Sisterhood Garden. And so this is what it looks like, right? To have a project together, to share skills and what it means to do a survey. Share at that time we used like a survey monkey, so they got to like tally up the results, and then they did a community presentation with like 100 people in attendance, and then have the result of the survey become the foundation of what we built as Hummingbird Farm and Sisterhood Gardens. Getting results. And so not only were we able to get results for the farm and for the gardens, but we were also a part of, you can see Hummingbird Farm is right here. This is what it looked like before the farm was built. On the top, we have Inchancajal Park. That was also a youth-led project. And now there's a beautiful, beautiful park, right, that we won. We did before pictures. Next time we'll do after pictures. And then at the bottom was the Capuso, right? The affordable housing at the Balboa BART station. And so just, yeah, just grateful for being able to organize, bring folks together, and have victories. And just, you know, like the messages, right, that we're sharing not only with our youth, but that they're then sharing with their families and their communities, right? And really, like, how are we improving our neighborhoods and we're having the same neighbors? And so how are we improving it for ourselves and not for somebody else? And so I think a big part of what happens when you build these beautiful community assets, right, of housing and farms. Right here we have, you know, vibrant public spaces, meeting community needs, opposing luxury housing development, people-powered community development, community scale economic development, truly affordable housing. How do we ensure that as we build all these beautiful things, we aren't getting displaced, right? Which has been a theme that's happened, right? We increase property values. We turn a brownfield, or like a brownfield is a lot designated by the Environmental Protection Agency as something that's toxic, right? One of our projects is that we turned a brownfield into a park, which was Parque Niños Unidos. And so immediately after that happened, a lot of neighbors were evicted because we increased the property values, right? Before that, it was a brownfield and it stank. People just threw garbage over the lot. And then we create a beautiful park, and then, you know, landlords want to raise the rent, want to sell. And so really looking at like, what are the ways in which we're ensuring through organizing that we have the same neighbors. It's for us and not for somebody else. Yeah. And this is the park that I'm talking about, Parque Niños Unidos. You know, it went from being toxic, being considered a brownfield. And then we worked with 3 local schools, and the kids in the elementary school were the ones that went to do advocacy at City Hall. They're the ones that put the signs up to tell people, you know, this is toxic. They're the ones that decided the name of the park, and they're the ones that decided the actual design of the park. And so really, you know, how are we in San Francisco's very diverse school system, creating those bridges for youth to work together, to have these community wins. And this was at the time when there was less than 1% of the parks in the mission. And so it's just another example of building solidarity based on environmental justice and the leadership of these kids. A funny story I have is, you know, my sister's 12 years younger than me. and we were somewhere with one of her friends, and we were driving by the park, and her friend was like, I helped build that park. And I was like, oh my God, you were a little kid. And just you were a little kid when that happened, because it took 10 years for that victory to happen. And so just we are powerful, and I think we need to hear that over and over again, because everywhere else in society we're told we're not. And then also, everybody from the littlest kid to the, oldest elder, has a say and has so much power when we come together.
And so at Hummingbird Farm, we had this like
Talk
seat.
about being an urban campesino.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm like, my brain. All right, so a little background. I was doing the math. I feel like I've actually been with Blair for like 12 years, and I started off as a youth organizer. And so a lot of these victories that Tere is talking about, I think is like this generational work that's happening. And I came in like the middle of that, right? Kind of like after all that organizing came, and then came like this next opportunity to really advocate to get the access to the land and how to manage, right, this land. How do we dive into like co-governance? How do we design, a farm? And so Hummingbird Farm is like a 6-acre farm that is guided by the principles of solidarity economy and environmental justice movements. We are a cooperatively ran urban farm, cultivating reciprocal relationships between people and the land. And it's really dedicated to the health of the Excelsior and Mission districts. Out here in the Southeast San Francisco, like we really see what we consider like a food apartheid, right? We don't want to use food deserts because deserts are actually really abundant in its own ecosystem, right? But here in San Francisco, we see like the income inequality gaps that are so significant, especially in like the Southeast San Francisco. So it was like really vital to have an urban space that was intending to grow food, but not just like regular like any food, but like really culturally relevant foods and plant medicine for our communities. And like that I mentioned, we don't have any fences, right? And so it's been really beautiful to just learn about different plants by like the different, walks of life that come by. We have, the Chinese elders harvesting all the chrysanthemums and the thistles. So it's been really cool to learn about plant medicine and foods through cross cultures. Like that I said, we don't really communicate via like words, but we're able to communicate still, right? And it's through these plants. And so we've been really able to grow food in community. You can say that everything that's cultivated at Hummingbird Farm, it's really a labor of love that comes from our volunteers, our youth interns. And it's just been like a really beautiful opportunity to like learn how to like heal with each other, how to heal each other, and how to heal with the earth, right? How are we leaning into like the earth and learning with her how to take care of each other, right? That reciprocal exchange, that it's not just like humans that get to thrive off this land, but it's like the bugs, the birds, the microorganisms, right? The water. And so it's been really cool to have this experience, right? And this, we would have never have gotten here if we didn't have that like very deep generational legacy work of organizing, right? And creating victories for our communities. And so Hummingbird Farm is a sacred and safe gathering space where community members can come together across generations to grow food, flowers, medicine, and share knowledge. And you can say that our farm was built off 5 core values: intergenerational, intercultural, education, community governance, and restoration, right? How are we leaning into these values to really continue to cultivate a space where we're not no longer surviving, but we're able to thrive along with like our ecosystems here?
And so just wanted to step a little bit back and just talk a little bit about the origins of Hummingbird. Like Alondra said, it's a generational treasure. The Common Roots program, like I mentioned before, was very active in the youth leadership development project with the Southwest Network for Environmental and Economic Justice and the Four Directions Youth Exchange. And so on one of those trips, I had a van full of youth from San Francisco. Many times, youth from CPA, from the Chinese Progressive Association, would come with us too. We'd roll together. And we're visiting Los Jardines Institute. Shout out to Richard Moore and Sofia Martinez, and also Pam Tali, who was a very active member of SNEEJ. And we were amazed that they were growing all this food, that they were like hiring high school students to grow it. They were selling it to the high school next door, and the high school had nutritious and delicious lunch. And we were just like, wow, we're in San Francisco, one of the richest cities in the world, and our lunch sucks. It doesn't biodegrade. It's disgusting, right? And so we came back, and a group of youth, I want to shout out Edgar Molina, Kelly Ortega, and Carlos Gomez Peterson. They wrote a manifesto called Flavors of the Heart, or Sabor para el Corazón. And in that manifesto, they wrote that, as youth growing up in the city and the mission, being impacted by the environmental racism and injustices, feeling the health impacts and asthma, cancers, and heart disease in their families, that we needed a place to heal. We needed a place to connect to land. If you've ever come to San Francisco, you know that, space is very sacred and expensive. And so, families live in a room. Families live in a flat. A lot of times you don't have access to a backyard. There isn't a front yard. And so, coming to the realization, including, myself, where our great-grandparents and sometimes grandparents lived to be over 100 years old, and then seeing the health impacts on our parents of being here and being sick at 40, 50, having diabetes, high blood pressure, like experiencing all those things. For us, the key became we need land to grow food, to grow plant medicine, to connect to those ancestral seeds. And so that's, where the Hummingbird Farm vision came from. And then, working together is how it became a reality. Like this. And so, cultivating land, community, and resilience. We have 6 acres, and we're able to grow in 2 large growing areas. We're able to bring people together to cultivate ancestral plants, right? And so some of the things that we've grown are, we grew corn, beans, and squash, or the milpecs, or the Three Sisters. And just really learning from that ancestral kind of like planting of the Three Sisters working together, the beans climbing up the corn, the squash creating cover for the soil, the beans putting in the nitrogen. And so really like how we reflect that lesson of the importance of working together, right? How we learn from the plants. Also just, ancestral foods and medicines. We have a healing collective where we come together and we distribute plant medicine to kids in San Francisco to support them with their education. We've been doing it for about 5 years and distributing over 1,000 plant medicine that we make at the farm, that we process, that we grow from seed. And so right on the right-hand side, we're holding California Poppy. In California Poppy, we're making an oxomil this year. An oxomil is a combination of honey and vinegar, really good for your digestive system. But also the medicine of poppy is to help you rest, to help calm your nervous system, to help you sleep deeply, to help you not have that chatter in the back of your head from stress when you need to go to sleep. And so we will be distributing this summer to youth. Then we also have different workshops where we're reclaiming our ancestral traditions to combat things like diabetes. So semillas guerrilleras ancestrales, oh, I put it in Spanish. It's like warrior seeds, ancestral warrior seeds. And so instead of making sugar skulls for Dia de los Muertos, we make amaranth skulls, which were the original food that we would use for like power, for energy, right? When we did long distance running ancestrally. And then just to delve deeper, amaranth was what we used in ceremony. And because of that, the Spaniards outlawed amaranth and tried to burn down all the crops all over Mexico when colonization just first began. And so amaranth is one of those seeds, and chia and hemp, all ancestral seeds that come from the Americas that were outlawed because they gave us power, they gave us strength within our bodies because they are connected to our own DNA structures and being able to give us the nutrition that we need. And so for Muertos now and also for Valentine's Day, instead of making anything with sugar, we use ancestral seeds. And then we teach community how to look at power bars and the nutritional value, and then look at what you can make and create the nutritional value, right? With no preservatives, as we build kind of like our own connection to these seeds. On the bottom, that's a picture from an exchange we did with SNAG, the Seven Native American Generations program. We did an exchange in Hawaii, and this was in the taro fields. And just, how that plant is seen as a big brother, kind of like how we see corn as our creator, right? And so that relationship to that plant, and being connected to it and building across cultures, because we have so many ways, especially land-based peoples, in which we're interconnected. Did you want to say anything? No. Trying to say anything? No. All right, and then just what it means to be working together. We do a lot of school field trips, and so we welcome kids from Chinese immersion, from Spanish immersion, from just all the local schools in our neighborhood to come plant, to come learn about the medicinal plant, to come learn about the medicinal properties and the support they can get from lavender, from rosemary. We also organize with the Young Women's Freedom Center and Five Elements. We want to give a big shout out to Five Elements, who does a lot of programming at our farm and is one of our biggest allies. And they actually helped lead this training with the Center for Third World Organizing. And so this happened in February. So what are the ways in which we're learning to organize together? And then we're putting it into action. We're going out and we're door knocking. We organized our first Black History Month event at the farm this year. And we were able to honor Marie Harrison, a longtime organizer who has passed, but was pivotal in shutting down the PG&E plant in Bayview Hunters Point that was spewing pollution directly into Bayview homes. And then also Cheyenne, we're really proud of Cheyenne, who's our supervisor in District 11, who was one of the original Common Ruth youth organizers. And so what are the ways in which we're supporting for our youth to continue their leadership development and then become public officials that are so pivotal in ensuring that we have access to public lands and ensuring that our voice is heard at City Hall. And so a big shout out to Cheyenne, and then also Ben. And then also, like, what are the cultural ways in which we're sharing, right? So I think on the left-hand side, how are we sharing in our culture and traditions at protests, at rallies, and ceremony?
And at Hummingbird Farm, really leaning into our intergenerational learning. I feel like we can't do any of this alone. And so really grateful for our elders and Here you see Concha Saucedo, who is, you can say, like our fairy godmother of the farm or madrina. And so we were able to honor her. We have a willow grove at Hummingbird Farm, which is kind of an indicator that we have water, right? We have a high water table, which is really important when we're trying to, tend to our watersheds. And Saucedo, which is Concha's last name, means the place of the willows. We were able to honor her with this placard, just honoring her story today, honoring her life today, giving her flowers today, here that she's still with us, and just continuing to learn with her. We've been blessed to be able to have like seasonal for I think 5 ceremonies every year since we've opened. We're about 8 years old. We're gonna turn 8 in November, so we're like 7, 7.5. And we've been able to host ceremonies honoring like the transitions of the seasons, guided by our elder Concha. And so really grateful for her like life, for her stories, for her legacy, and continuous like teachings of what it means to like, cultivate, medicine within each other so we can heal together.
And then just like I said, how is what we are doing connected to schools, to children, and then what is our responsibility as stewards on Ramaytush Ohlone lands to always remember them, mention them, include them in our education programming, right? And so our programming always includes learning from the plants, learning to work with each other, activities to work with each other, and then learning about environmental justice and climate justice and how as communities are the most affected, we have to be ready and work with each other to grow our food. We have to work with each other to be ready in case of emergencies. We have to work together and really delve deeper into like where we come from, what are our ancestors and what is their land base. And then now that we're all together in Yelamu, like what is our responsibility to each other and the land. And then one of the most beautiful things that we've been able to do is have a Solidarity Forever movie night and events process. And this has been a way in which we've been super able to connect with land-based peoples all over the world. So we've been able to host a movie night with Boricua and what was the name of the movie?
Aquí nos tenemos.
Nos tenemos. And so really showing kind of like the resiliency of the Puerto Rican community after Hurricane Maria and how they came together, and they had to do it on their own because we all know Trump was throwing I don't know if it was toilet paper or paper napkins, right? And because of, different legislations, Puerto Rico couldn't receive aid when the United States wasn't sending it. And so because we were able to host, because we've been building relationship with each other for a long time through spaces like the Climate Justice Alliance, we were able to go and be supportive in the rebuilding of farms after Hurricane Maria. We were able to host a movie night to talk more about just the beauty and resilience of Puerto Rican community to like take care of themselves, and also build with allies in the United States. And then we were also able to take our whole farm team and do an exchange and just, go farm hopping and support and learn so much knowledge, so much energy, so many elders. We also hosted Palestinian movie night where we shared the movie Janine Janine. And during that movie night, we planted 3 olive trees because of, everything that's going on in Palestine, to be in solidarity with land defenders, to acknowledge, the destruction that the Israeli state is doing on destroying these beautiful olive groves that have been in people's families for hundreds of years. We planted red poppies, and we named an area of our farm Palestine in solidarity. And we did this in collaboration with the Palestinian Youth Movement. to raise awareness, to grieve together, and then also to plant hope, and dedicate an area at our farm uh, to Palestine. And then we've hosted 2 Filipino community nights, right? Movie nights, in which we've been able to dedicate a tree to the Batang Five who were killed by the U.S. military in the Philippines as land defenders. We have a tree dedicated to Amado, a guava tree. And we have a whole area called Lupa, another tree dedicated to Ube, a youth organizer from the Excelsior who passed. And yeah, and the area is called Lupa, meaning land, earth, in Tagalog. And this is a place where, we uh, honor all these land defenders, their amazingness, and we have like calamansi trees, we have just different plants that will grow in San Francisco from the Philippines. Yes. And then on the left, we have a picture from our Dia de los Muertos or Day of the Dead event. And I think also, our Day of the Day event is dedicated to land defenders all over the world, because we know that in Latin America and all over the world, land defenders are the ones that are being murdered by corporations for profit. And so we feel it in San Francisco when any of our families get displaced, right? It's like we're being displaced from a place where, a community that we've built, that our families have been in for many years, that we create the energy, we create the spirit. And so, really looking at what are the ways in which land isn't just a for-profit avenue, right? Land is for those who work it, as land is for those who build relationship with it, love it, steward it. And so ultimately, Hummingbird Farm is working on, building this collective sense of what it means to steward land in a just way.
So Hummingbird Farm, we really lean into our ancestral knowledge and traditions. I think being able to learn from the corn. I think at Hummingbird Farm, we've also been able to tend to Tausinte, which is the ancestor of corn. This was a plant, a wild grain or a wild grass that was domesticated by folks from Mexico back in the days, thousands of years ago. And it's really beautiful to be able to steward these seeds, what it means to put into practice our ancestral knowledge and tend to the lands. We also have different grasslands, right? And really learning from the stewards of these lands and working with different organizations like the Culture Conservancy to learn how to preserve our spaces, especially our riparian area and grasslands, as we're also trying to grow our ancestral foods. We've been able to grow tomatillos, culturally relevant foods that are really important to our community. And I think plant medicine, a lot of these plant medicine skill shares that we've been able to offer to community comes from ancestral knowledge that has been passed down to us. And so also learning from our community leaders, community elders, community culture keepers. Here we have a picture of Irma, who is, I think she was doing the Agua Florida workshop, where we're learning how to tend to our spiritual hygiene, right? Not only are we here to learn how to be healthy physically and eat healthy, but also to tend to our spiritual selves, right? We are going through so much, and what are ways that we're tending to the spirit, right? That really impacts the emotional and the mental.
We offer apprenticeships, so opportunities for folks to learn not only, how to grow things, how to manage land, how to work together, how to build community, how to do plant medicine, how to make candles, how to make incense, how to make different plant tinctures and oxymills that can support us, right? So we do have apprenticeships. And then, you know, I think I know we're running out of time, but just in closing, you know, wanting to say that we are all interconnected, like the mycelium networks, connecting to ancestral land-based traditions that reflect our neighborhood and immigrant families is our goal, right? And that's what we try to do every day. Creating intergenerational spaces for connection and learning from the oldest to the youngest. Leadership development, like all of us are learning all the time, right? Like, how do we not create structures of hierarchy? But really, like, everyone has something to teach and everybody has something to learn. And how are we training the next generation of SF land stewards through apprenticeships, through workforce development? And Solidarity Forever, how are we collaborating with schools and organizations? How are we governing our land? I think, you know, we were a part of organizing and winning 2 parks that then were turned over to Parks and Rec, and then we lost access unless we paid. And so Hummingbird Farm was intentional about, like, we need to govern because we need to have access. We don't want it to be locked up, right? Public land should be for everybody. You know, always honoring the Ramaytush Ohlone, native plant restoration and regenerative land management. Like Alondra said, we're on one of the last of the grasslands of San Francisco. And what an honor it is to be able to work with those native plants, right? That this is what San Francisco looked like before, and this is like the last of it, right? And so I feel like that's a real big privilege, honor, and responsibility. And then feeding our communities and growing organic, culturally relevant food because food is medicine. And right here in the middle, we have 2 second-generation Urban Campesinx. And so these are both, the Urban Campesinx started like 15 years ago. And so they were in high school and now they're like in their early 30s. And so these are some kids. On the left is our Mother's Day. This year we took a break, but on Mother's Day we usually plant our corn, beans, and squash. So we honor Mama Earth and we honor our mothers. And then on the right, that's a picture from the Solidarity Forever movie night that we hosted for Palestine. And right next to it, right behind all those folks is where we planted the 3 olive trees and the area we call Palestine. And so we just want to thank you. These are our emails if you want to reach out for anything. And this is actually a community engagement process for a build out that we're doing because we are on 6 acres, but we're hoping to build out kind of like our farm as we turn 8. So yeah. Thank you so much. Did you want to?
No, yeah, just thank you for this opportunity to share our stories.
Thank you so much. It was such powerful, inspiring testimony and story and journey of you and the Hummingbird Farm have been making. I so appreciate like every part you have generously shared with us today. And I see that there are already 2 questions shared through the chat. So the first question was, how does community decide what gets to grow at Hummingbird Farm? The question was from Alexis.
So, I mean, I think we're working on that. But right now, because, you know, we have a partnership with the Women Farmers and Leadership Forum in Sebastopol. And so we have a crop team made up of some of our community leaders and the Women Farmers Leadership in Food.
I
Is
always
that?
forget, yeah.
They have been providing most of our starts for the last 7 years. And so they're all women farmers in Sebastopol and they make extra. And then they provide for like 8 or 9 farms in the Bay Area. And so a lot of what we grow in our starts comes from them as a donation. And so we're really grateful to them. And then I think what we've been working on as crop team is trying to figure out like, well, what does our community want to eat, right? Because sometimes they're not feeling the kale or the collards. And so I know Alondra has been a big advocate of the tomatillos because we all love green salsa. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, I think like just we had the opportunity to grow different things and having the opportunity to just like observe, right? Leaning into like permaculture skills here. Really through observation, you see like what thrives on the land, right? And tomatillos are one of those things that just gives abundantly and everyone loves it, right? Another one you can say is like the lettuces, the cabbages, right? We grow a lot of brassicas, which are not the collards. I think yeah, they're collards, broccoli, cabbages, kale, cauliflower, and so those also grow in abundance, and they've been doing well. So that's another way that we kind of decide how we want to, grow food. But yeah, I think like we in the past have grown like different things, but living in San Francisco and having like not as much sun makes it difficult. So we've also really leaned into growing plant medicine. We've been last year and the prior year, we had really amazing chamomile years, like 50, 60 pounds of fresh chamomile that we were able to process and distribute to our community. And so really kind of just like learning from the land. We get gifted all these plants, we try and tend to them, what grows, and then we're like, all right, well, maybe we should grow that. And so trying to learn a little bit more about like some of the other things like squashes, cucumbers are things that we're growing this year, some peppers. The cabbages are doing phenomenal. Right, they were also growing tulsi, a lot of like also too like a lot of native plants, and so there's just like a lot of abundance going on.
And then just to delve a little bit deeper into the question, we've done a lot of investment in our youth, in all our members in training, right? So for example, the original Urban Campesinx, about 15 of them went through permaculture training, and then they got to design the farm. This year, our apprentices are going to permaculture training at Occidental Arts and Ecology Center through a partnership called ALMA with Movement Generation and the Occidental Arts and Ecology Center. And so we invest a lot in them learning about how to observe the land, what grows well, what are the needs of our community, and what do people want, right? Like merging those two things together. And then we have crop team that comes together and has very insightful discussions, sometimes with disagreements, with agreement on what needs to grow, right? And so I think a lot of it is about, dialogue and working together. And it's slower, and I think that's frustrating to some people, but we find it very rich, right? That we're all learning and we all have a say. And I think we're trying to figure out how to move collectively, together more. Because sometimes it's just like, we got to get them in now, And so, we're always up against the timing of like how long the starts will stay in their little containers and, getting them in quick, and then having discussions on what needs to happen and what needs to get in.
Thank you so much for the answers. I think like as we engage with this question, I now get like learning more about the history and the leadership style or like community culture of the hummingbirds. I really appreciate it. I see that there is another question. Let me read it. I don't know if I missed it, but why choose the name Hummingbird Farm? Any specific inspirations? Did community decide on the name? That is the question.
I guess I can share a little bit. So Hummingbird Farm was like a collective process. I think we had the opportunity to learn about like the hummingbird creation story.
The
Ohlone creation story. And so a lot of the youth really we're inspired, and we created this kind of like community engagement process around like naming the farm. And so we kind of talked about, being stewards of Ohlone land and what that means and the creation stories. And so we created this process where community then got to learn about the creation story and then got to vote around like different ways that we want to name Hummingbird Farm. To me, the hummingbird stuck out. There was other stuff like hummingbird coyote and different things that also surfaced alongside the Ohlone creation story. And so we ended up voting, and community decided that we wanted to name it Hummingbird Farm. And so it's supposed to be Hummingbird Farm, but in 5 different languages, like Tagalog, Cantonese, Spanish,
and
English, and I forget
and Ohlone.
and Ohlone. Oh yes, and Ohlone. Yeah, so those.
And so in the creation story, there is like a flood and there's like a mountain. And so then the flood recedes, and there's a lot of different Ohlone creation stories. This is one that I think it might be more southern Ohlone. But in the creation story, the eagle represents kind of like the bird's view. And then the Ohlone are, believe themselves direct descendants of the coyote. And then when the water recedes, the coyote comes back and is told to go to go to other parts of the land as the flood recedes. And the hummingbird in the story represents the collective wisdom of the ancestors. And so I think that's why it's stuck, because we wanted our space and the plants and the seeds to represent kind of that collective wisdom of the ancestors, specifically because it would be the ancestors of, all of our communities, right? From Chinese to, Latin American to Filipino, to all the youth that worked on making this happen. And so it felt fitting, right, that we were bringing all that wisdom together to create this space for healing.
Thank you so much. Is there any other questions from the audience?
I think the hummingbird got fire creation story, I think it's up north. I don't think it's the Ohlone one, or maybe it is. There's many, and this is just one that we had heard. I think it was from Indian Canyon, right? It was from Indian Canyon, from Canyon, and so that's what we were rooted in, because Canyon was working directly with Jonathan Cordero, who is a part of the Ramatush Association and a part of one of the original families of Yelamu.
Thank you so much. I have many questions that I want to ask, but I also want to be mindful of the time we have, and to our like precious audience, like we will have another set of conversation for our podcast recording. So please stay tuned and check out our podcast file when it's out. So please give a big virtual applaud to the 2 fabulous, inspiring presenters of the day. I sincerely appreciate your talk. And thanks everyone for joining us today. And again, like we will share this Zoom recordings as well as other upcoming information about other events through our newsletter as well as our Instagram. So please stay connected. Thanks everyone, and I wish you a peaceful, relaxing weekend. Thanks.